Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Nick, and congratulations because you are just killing it now. Launched not even 2 years ago. Nick recently with Thrive Market just closed a $111 million round, somewhere around that this June. And it hasn't been that easy raising funding. We just did, Ronnie, one of our reporters, wrote about how it's the lowest in 2.5 years in terms of fundraising. So how challenging was it raising these funds, and what were some of the investors asking you in order for them to invest in you?
Yeah, I think the paradigm has really shifted as the market has changed. Investors, and particularly growth stage investors, are looking now for metrics that maybe weren't as important before. Mm-hmm. Certainly for us at the Series A, it was growth. That's what everyone wanted to see. And I think for the last few years, that's kind of been the same approach even at a Series B or a Series C. So we definitely found that more investors were worried about unit economics, wanted to understand sustainability, dug in a lot more on the operational side of the business. But for us, frankly, it wasn't a hard round to raise. We had a lot of people coming in, and I think for some companies it's been challenging, but for companies that are building the business right and thinking about the long term, you should be doing those things anyway. Mm-hmm. And so we, end to end, it was less than 3 months of process.
Wow.
And got it closed in July, and now back to work.
Yeah, congratulations. So I want to say that there are microphones here, so if anybody does have a question for Nick, you can stand up and ask a question. Wave your arms so I can see you. So I want to talk about your early fundraising days, because I think this is interesting. I've read a lot of articles, and you and I've talked about it. There are a lot of people, and there are a lot of early stage companies here. Yep. And so right now, they're getting rejected left and right, and much like you were rejected left and right when you were starting out your company. So talk about how tough was it? Why was it so tough to get their attention early on?
Yeah, so in contrast to our last round, our first round was, it was 6 months of wandering through the wilderness, talking to every VC we possibly could, pitching angels left, right, center, and to your point, rejections all around. So, and that was actually in a very strong fundraising environment, right? Early 2014. And for us, it was really, really hard. We were trying to position a business that is going against very strong retail incumbents in a space where you've also got a monolithic, e-commerce giant that's doing everything and has made that their stated mission, right? Amazon.
What was your pitch to them in the beginning, and did it change a little? Did it fluctuate every time you went to see a VC or every time you learned
Honestly,
more?
it was the exact same pitch. I mean, for us, it's about the mission. We want to make healthy living affordable for every American family. For those of you who don't know about Thrive Market, we're basically a wholesale buying club online for natural and organic products. So think Whole Foods meets Costco, but online at prices that anyone can afford. So we wanted to make natural, organic, non-GMO products accessible for the same price as conventional products when we ship anywhere in the country. And frankly, a lot of VCs who are in LA and San Francisco and New York are in parts of the country and have income levels where Whole Foods works just fine, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they didn't really get the problem. And I think it's actually a big problem with tech in general that so many companies, because of the personal, social, economic biases that investors have, are solving problems that are for the 1%.
Right.
And for us, we're solving a problem for the 99%. Right? It's the middle class, middle American families who don't get to go to the Whole Foods, and even if they could, can't afford to buy the products.
Was their objection or their concern that these lower income families don't care about better or organic food, or that you wouldn't be able to make the economics work by giving them some, because there's a reason why it's in these areas, because they're priced higher?
I think it was both. I think the implicit assumption was, look, there's a reason Whole Foods is only in generally affluent markets. And that's, by the way, changing a little bit, which is exciting.
Yes.
And I think that, in our case, it's a market landscape that's shifted very fast. 10 years ago, middle Americans weren't thinking about getting healthy. Even 5 years ago, natural and organic was just sort of coming around. And in the last four years or so, it's just exploded. And to the point where our biggest bloggers, are moms in the Midwest with 6 million plus unique visitors on their sites every month. That didn't happen even in 2010, 2011. So I think the VCs weren't aware of that trend to the degree, or weren't aware of how developed it was. And what happened for us from a fundraising standpoint is we ended up going to the bloggers, the influencers, the content creators who were at the epicenter of the trend and feeling it themselves. And those people got the mission, they got the values, they lived and breathed the space themselves, and many of them had strong cash flow businesses. So we actually raised about $10 million from 150 or so influencers in the natural organic space before we took a dime of VC money.
I think that's fascinating. I'll just repeat that Nick raised $10 million without going to a VC. Well, first of all, the VCs rejected him, so we all know that happens often. And so he decided to go out and reach out to you. And I've been talking to a number of people about this because I just think it's such a clever way to go about creating your own momentum by bringing everyone in to be your advocates and be part of the ecosystem, or build the ecosystem together. So I said to Nick, I said, so you have 200 investors on your cap table? And he said, no, I have 300.
I was going to say, yeah, it's even more.
So we actually raised it from 300. So so what size were the checks, and if there's startups out here who might want to try to figure out how to get their constituents involved, who should they look at and who should they consider?
So
what's the framework for
the checks
this?
ranged in size. The key for us is that we are going to individuals who actually cared about what we were doing, and individuals that could help us in ways other than just providing money. And so we, the first handful, it was real, tough. Like, a lot of these bloggers had never made an investment before. We had checks ranging from $5,000 to $50,000 there in the early days. But what happened was, once they got on board, they really got on board. And what we found is that when you find someone who invests their own personal capital and doesn't do that for a living, it means a lot. And then when they're putting it into something whose outcome they actually care about, it means that much more. And if you're able to develop a relationship with those people that is built around strategic and advisory and alignment of values, it just compounds the entire relationship that much more. And so these people actually, one, went out and told their friends who are also influencers and bloggers. And then two, when we launched, we're actually the primary way that we reached our audience. And many of them had audiences of millions of people. So we got those first kind of half dozen, and then it just spiraled out from there in terms of the investor pool. So it wasn't like we were going out knocking on 150 plus influencer stores.
You kept a convertible note open.
We just kept the convertible note open, and then it was inbound interest.
Right.
But where things got really exciting for us was when we actually launched.
Which was 2014, November?
November 2014, okay. And we did not buy any paid media. We did, no one was interested in doing press. It was just going out through these influencers who talked to their audiences in really authentic ways about what Thrive was doing and why they were supporting it. And I'll tell you, the biggest blogger that we had, or still have actually, who's an investor, she put a $15 million check in, or sorry, $15,000 check, excuse me. Opposite end of the spectrum. $15,000 checks, first investment she'd ever made in a private company, before she made the investment.
And she's accredited, all of these people
she has an amazing business, right? She gets over 7 million unique visitors to her website every month. Incredible businesswoman. She's a 27-year-old mother of 4 who lives in rural Kentucky.
How'd you find her?
So she found us, and she found us through some of the other influencers that came in at the beginning. But what was amazing is we launched, to give you an idea of just how impactful someone like that can be, we got some coverage on Good Morning America about 2 months into the business. When she hit her audience with the first email, it spiked our traffic 4 times higher than GMA,
wow.
And the conversion was an order of magnitude higher. So, those are the kinds of people that we had, and we didn't end up doing any paid media for the first 6 months of the business. Got to, I think it was a $45 million run rate just on the backs.
After 6 months.
After 6 months, just on the backs of these influencers helping promote for us.
That's crazy. But also because you had all these influencers, you also launched, I talked to my husband about this sort of lean startup versus being totally ready and packaged fully. And there are a lot of people who take a long time and put something very smart together. They don't just put it out there. They actually, it's a complete product. And you came out with 3,500 SKUs. Right now you have what, 4,000 SKUs?
Only 4,000 still.
Yeah, so you still, 3,500, that's quite a bit. You didn't come out with 100 and say, okay, let's get this working. Yep. Let's have 3,500, let's have the website together, let's have our suppliers, let's have everyone together. So you actually came in full on, it's not the lean startup, maybe you are running lean, but it's not really that, it's a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, look, on the back end, it was still pretty lean. Yeah. We were all packing boxes. Yeah. Our warehouse was in the center of our office. It wasn't anything fancy, but we're, again, I think for us, it kind of goes back to Amazon. Like, we're in a space where some of the things that you just have to do, the table stakes to get in the game, already set a pretty high threshold. And as an operationally intensive business, you have to you have to have a selection. If we're going to get people to actually come on the site, they need to be able to find the products they want to find, and you need to have the products from the right vendors. So we had over 500 vendors from day one that we were buying supply from. You have to hold inventory because otherwise you can't ship fast enough. You have to have a relationship with a shipper, otherwise you can't ship at all.
Right.
So, unfortunately, if you're building just software, you can launch with that MVP, test, iterate. It's all digital. Moving bits is really easy. We're shipping boxes all over the country with lots of product. It just requires more infrastructure.
Did you think about, should I hold inventory? I mean, was that something that you thought about? Well, maybe because there's a lot of inventory risk. So why did you decide that that's going to be your model?
It was really what we felt like we had to do to solve the problem. People want to be able to make, taking a step back, for us it's about access to healthy living. And part of that is affordability. Part of it's also ease, right? People go to the corner mart and get processed food because it's easy and it's fast. People go to fast food because it's easy and it's fast. I think the standard's been set in e-commerce that you got to be able to get products to people in 2 days. And if you're trying to do just in time and not hold any inventory, you're talking about a week to 2 weeks to get product in from a supplier, another week to 2 weeks to get it actually out once you're, because you don't have it right there in supply. And at that point, it doesn't work. I think there are certain types of products where it's a one-time purchase, it's maybe a little of a luxury good, and people are willing to wait, and that's what the flash sales model was built around. But for your consumable products, right? If you need toilet paper, you need toilet paper. If you're out of your bars that you eat in the morning, you got to get them. And so we said pretty much from the beginning, we want to be able to reach people in 2 days on average. What's it going to take to do that? And inventory was part of it.
And when you get the inventory, something interesting here that you work with the brands, and because you're working closely, some of those brands are also your investors, and some of them you're promoting. So do they give you a discount on that inventory in lieu or in exchange for promotion? Is that how you're getting some?
There's some of that,
discount?
But honestly, with the vendors, it went back to some of the same principles that it did with the investors. We're in a space where a lot of these companies started their brands, their businesses, because they believe in the mission too. They want to make healthy, natural, organic food more accessible. And for them, the fact that in order to build their business, they're having to sell through very affluent targeting retail channels, they wish that weren't the case. They also are starting to get to a scale now where to keep growing, they know they have to access mainstream families. So we actually, similar to the investors, we got a lot of support very early on from vendors who are willing to say, how do we make this work? And our approach was to build the relationships, to be transparent with our own cost structure, to share what we were trying to do, and to really work with them flexibly. A lot of them were worried about cannibalization for their other channels.
Do they sell to Whole Foods too, some of them?
Of course.
And do they sell, if they, items on Whole Foods, they would be on Thrive Market for what, 20% less, or?
Typically more than that. It's typically about a 30% discount to MSRP. And the reason they're comfortable doing that vis-a-vis their other retail channels is that we have that membership model, right? So only members can see our pricing. similar to a Costco, right? Where when you go into a Costco, you're going to get better than the typical MAP pricing, but it's only accessible to members.
Right. Talk about how you decided to come up with the subscription model, the Costco model, because around 2014, what's been really popular, what still remains somewhat popular is sort of the gift boxes, started with Birchbox, and then you have the sort of monthly subscription, such as Just Fab, which is now Textile. So you could have gone the route of sending the boxes, the monthly boxes, or the subscription model. Why this sort of annual subscription model?
Yeah, I think for us it was, again, we wanted to make it as easy for people as possible. We wanted to be a small step from what they already do to get these kinds of products. And we also wanted the economics to work so that we could actually provide natural and organic products at or below the price of conventional equivalents. And if you're going to provide Kind bars for the price of a Snickers bar, you got to make that work somehow. And for us, the answer was, let's not take any margin on the products. Let's only take margin on this membership. Let's front load that, right? So it's paid at the beginning of the year, the same way you do for Amazon Prime or you do for Costco. And then, that allows us to pass on all the savings to the members. So really for us, again, it started with the mission. We want to make healthy living affordable and accessible truly. What's a model that can actually make that happen? And one option would have been the flash sales, hold no inventory, buy in huge quantities bulk and send it out, but that takes too long. Another would be to try to box it up and get sample size items, but no one wants to be getting a subscription box that is small items for their
You also said that was
essentials.
sort of a fad. That was sort of not really the way people are going to consume, and it's really fun now, but it's not something that
who knows if it's a fad, right? We know it's new, right? And some of those
Relatively
end up
new.
being long-term trends. Some of them end up being short-term trends. I think the model makes sense for certain types of products. I think you look at Dollar Shave Club and what they've done for razors, that it solves a big problem. And there's certainly, I think, for a lot of our products being consumables, an argument to be made that an auto ship subscription model could really make sense. And we're candidly going to launch features like that over time. But we also wanted to meet people where they're at. And most people right now, to buy their essential home products, their pantry staples, their cooking products, their snacks, they want to choose what they want to choose. They don't want to be funneled into an auto subscription. And the membership model enables us to do that.
And the membership, just for everybody, it's $60
$60 a year.
And you have 4 million paying
I
members
wish.
now?
Not yet. No, it's
3?
it's in the hundreds of thousands, over 300,000.
Oh, wow. Well
We've got over
overstated.
4 million registered users.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So we let people register and they can come on, browse, do whatever. And then, of course, to actually buy, you got to initiate a trial membership, and then from there they pay.
We'll talk a little later about just the overall market, because Whole Foods is now going into some of these lower income places. But I want to switch it up here, and I want to talk about you personally, because we're going to hear a lot of these personal stories. Mark Cuban's going to talk about how when he was 12, he sold garbage bags to buy sneakers, and Tree Tran from Munchery is going to talk about how he traveled on a 35-foot boat to get to first, I guess, Indonesia, but traveled almost like a country as wide as the country. It's 3,300 miles. And so what about, and those are stories that from their childhood that really gave them grit, gave them drive, and made them want to become entrepreneurs. So what about you? What's your story?
Not quite as exciting, honestly, or as challenging. I mean, I grew up like Norman Rockwellian, middle class, Midwestern, nuclear family, all the things that you imagine in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is where I grew up. But I did get the entrepreneurial bug early, and for me, the first was mowing lawns, and then it was actually tutoring SAT. So after I graduated from high school, I didn't want to get a real job. I did well on the test, was on my way to Harvard. Not that many kids in Minneapolis were doing that at the time. And so I kind of used my local academic celebrity, which was a little lame, but worked to start a business I called Ivy Insiders. And
This was in college?
This was right before I went to college.
Okay, high school.
And it started out where it was just like I didn't want to get a real job. But what
Were your parents trying to get you to?
I think they would have liked it.
Okay.
You know, they would have liked it. But what I found was, as I just looked at the market, if you will, as an 18-year-old, Princeton Review, Kaplan, I had never even considered taking these courses. And as I looked at the prices, like $1,200 to take an SAT class. And I had done well on the SAT. I had friends who were just as smart or smarter than I was that hadn't. And it had helped me get into Harvard. And a lot of these kids, it was like, it determines your future. And so I started getting real kind of conviction on this idea that this is a crazy, crazy test. And it's crazy that you can buy your way to a better score. But for most people, at least the people that I was around, that wasn't the case. And when I got to Harvard and found out that everyone gets a near perfect score and they all got prepped for years beforehand, it would like really reinforce that. And so it was actually my first kind of foray into an access-oriented business. We charged a third of the price of Kaplan and Princeton Review. We ended up expanding and hiring Ivy League undergrads from Harvard and the rest of the Ivies to go back to their hometowns and run these courses. And we worked with tens of thousands of kids to raise their scores.
So that's that's a business.
It was a real business. It was a real business.
Helping students, high school students, get through their SATs.
Yeah, and then what we did is we actually created what we called an Ivy Scholars Program, where we had a no empty seats policy. So in our classes, if you didn't get to 20 students, you would have to actually give away those extra seats to kids that couldn't afford it. So we also helped tens of thousands of kids get free SAT prep. And it was, we built a great business.
This is why you were in high school?
It was when I was in college.
Oh, college.
And then I ran it for 3 years afterwards. We ended up getting bought actually by business in LA.
Wow, congratulations.
And so it was my first little entrepreneurial win. Also got me out to the West Coast. But for me personally, the exit was great. And it's a notch or whatever. But what really, really was rewarding was the fact that of what we'd accomplished and the access we'd created and the legacy that business still continues. And so as I looked for my next opportunity, I wanted to be focused on access again. And I actually met my co-founder who has, I think, a much more interesting story. He actually grew up on a hippie commune in Ojai, California, where they were doing wholesale buying of natural and organic products back in the 80s and 90s. And he initially pitched me as an investor and was thinking about a Groupon model for healthy food. He was pitching me as an investor. He's like, invest, right? Yeah. And I was doing some angel investing at the time. I was just rolling off my earnout. And I heard his story and this idea of bringing kind of stripping the hippie part out, but bringing this wholesale buying club to the masses online.
What's wrong with the hippie part?
Nothing's wrong with the hippie part. It was just how do you make it mainstream? Okay. And look, the hippie has not come out of him. You see him. He's got the jewelry and everything. And I loved that. Like for me, and Gunnar's my co-founder and co-CEO. He is so authentic. And we just hit it off. And I basically told him, I'll invest, but you need to take me with you. Let's do this together. And that was it.
And that's Thrive Market.
That was the start. So that was Thrive Market. And my feeling was, look, let's not do the Groupon thing for all the reasons I described before. Right. We need to have a stable catalog. Let's think a little bigger on this. We actually brought in a third co-founder, who's our CTO, Sasha Siddhartha. And what we found from the beginning, again, similar to the investors and the vendors, is that mission that Gunnar was so passionate about from the beginning that I resonated with because of my last business. It just resonated with a lot of people, and the business became a magnet for talent, and that started the snowball rolling.
That sounds like right after college. What are you, like 25?
I was 28 at that time. I'm older than I look. I'm 32.
We have 5 more minutes. We have about 5 more minutes. So if anybody wants to ask a question, this is a really good time to ask about the fundraising, raising $10 million without going to VCs, and how to get your brand out there. So the mics are right there. But let's talk about angel investing really quickly. So how many investments have you made?
I've made quite a few.
Quite a few. And so what do you look for? What do you look for in an entrepreneur and an idea? And do you consider yourself a product guy or a salesman?
Not really either, honestly. I'm a mile wide and an inch deep. I'm passionate about product. Okay. I love selling and pitching. I really like leading and working with teams. So I'm pretty good at a lot of things, but not an expert in any one thing. And for me, what I look for in a business is one, a problem that I actually care about. I did some real estate investing after I sold my first company. It was like great returns, but it was just buying stuff. And I've kind of decided, similar to what I've done as an entrepreneur, as an investor, I really want the things that I get involved with to resonate with my values. So that's the first thing for me. Obviously, you're looking at that opportunity, and is it a big business opportunity that has to match up to, but it has to be something that actually is meaningful to me. And then the second thing, which is just as important, is just the entrepreneur or the entrepreneurs, that they feel that same level of passion, and you can get that in the first meeting. And so if I find those two things, which are pretty rare actually, right? A business that's a great business opportunity that also happens to be something that matters,
Sure.
and has an entrepreneur, that kind of trifecta that's the ideal investment for me.
Well, what about the actual, just not the entrepreneur, but what's a great business opportunity, particularly in this organic, health food, non-toxic industry that you're in,
Yep.
that you're trying to build, and I know you're trying to look for companies in that space. So what are some of the interesting opportunities there that would pique your interest?
I mean, there's so much innovation happening right now in food and consumer packaged goods in general. You see incubators popping up all over the place, and I think this movement, really, this mass secular trend towards less processing, lower sugar, more transparent supply chain, more sustainable sourcing, all these things are, I think they're going mainstream. They have gone mainstream in many ways already, and I think that trend is just going to continue to crescendo. And we see just incredible brands, right, that are either coming onto Thrive Market to begin with, or that we're seeking out to try to get them on Thrive Market, that are really doing innovative things, that have built the brand around real authenticity and resonance with their customers. And so I look for a good business, at least a good consumer business. It has those values, and then it's able to communicate them in a way that really resonates with the lifestyle vibe of consumers.
Okay. Any questions? Anyway, okay, let's take the overall market. So now you have Amazon, has Amazon Fresh. They're starting to open up stores. You've got Walmart going into low-income housing, sort of challenging your story, because basically you are Whole Foods, but Whole Foods is now you're Whole Foods for the affordable version of Whole Foods, but now Whole Foods is becoming affordable. So when you look at Amazon or Whole Foods, which one are you more afraid of? Which one's going to get it right?
So one, I think it's great that Whole Foods is going into lower income areas and spreading their footprint. They just launched their 365 concept, which is a lower price point brick and mortar store. They have a very aggressive rollout plan. We think that's exciting, right? And we think that to the extent that that's in part a response to companies like us, we feel great that we're ushering this movement forward. Whole Foods is a business that has incredible values. They've really been the pioneer in natural organic retail. So to see them taking this step to try to go mainstream, that's exciting. And our feeling is, the more mainstream natural and organic can go, the better it's going to be for everyone.
Sure.
We're less concerned about competition. We're more concerned with making sure that secular trend continues. Who am I more afraid of? I think Amazon is one of the most formidable businesses that's been built in the last century. And I think the long-term orientation of Jeff Bezos and the customer obsession that they have and that they bring to every product and feature and business that they go into, I just don't know any other companies that have done that. And to have built what they've built and be here 20 years later through up and down cycles and be as successful as they have in multiple businesses, that's a threat you have to take seriously. Yeah. And I think one of the things we think about all the time is, in an e-commerce environment where Amazon is the everything store, what differentiates? You got to be doing something different, and for us, it's the curation, it's the trust that every food product on the site is non-GMO, it's the search and discovery features that we have, it's the content, it's the values, it's the sustainable eco-packaging, it's the transparency around the supply chain. It's all those things that Amazon, because they're an everything store, is not going to invest in, that we're really focused on.
Right, and you're armed with 200, 300 investors who really want to see you succeed too.
Right.
So Nick, thank you so much. And did we have a question?
I felt like if this is on, I don't know if you can hear me. I'll try to speak loud for those in the back of the room. I felt like you needed a question. You mentioned you had 300 investors. For the cap table, that's a lot. Were VCs intimidated? Did you have any problems? And how did you work through those problems with having that many people on your cap table?
Honestly, it wasn't an issue. We were definitely worried about that. The Jobs Act makes it possible now to expand the cap table. And actually, you can do it even more aggressively than we did it at this point, legally. The key thing for us was to, when we did the Series A, create the types of terms that still enable the business from a corporate governance standpoint to function efficiently. We did that, and the investors were fine with it.
Wonderful, thank you. I see that's a great opportunity for many businesses with the Job Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, somebody back there? Or? No, okay. All right, Nick, thank you so much.